To order. Thanks for being here. The previous minutes were sent out in the agenda packet, and they are here if you have a paper packet. If you take a quick look at those, we can start off with a motion to approve.
Dr. O'Brien, could we at least know who's in the room and who's on the phone?
Sure.
Mark Kenyon.
Charmaine Jaffrey.
Jason White.
Megan Mahaffey.
Mark Kenyon.
Todd
Nikki
Reisner.
Kelly.
John Doran.
Ron Hassel.
Tyler
Robbie Mike, UVMD. Alain Fear Medical Transport Service.
Beth Moses, ECMC.
Don Treepet.
Donna Kamen, Elizabeth Broadbent, Southern Healthcare System.
Naveen Seth.
Brian Clemency.
And in the room sitting near me are Dr. Walters, Dr. McNamara, Dr. Lynch, myself, Karen Broderick, and then do we have voting members in the audience that should announce themselves? No. Okay. So, with our members announced, I would look for a motion to approve or accept the minutes from November. Motion. By Dr. McNamara.
I'll second.
By Dr. Walters. Any opposition? Great. Meeting minutes are accepted. So CMAC SEMSCO. I didn't hear Dr. Bart on the phone, but Dr. Walters is with us. Anything coming that we need to know about?
I don't think we've had a meeting since our last REMAC meeting, so I don't think there's anything.
Okay.
So to bring up, the next meeting is the first week in February. Do we have meetings since then? Oh. Well, then maybe we haven't had a REMAC meeting since the last CMAC meeting. Then I stand corrected. So let me go through just a couple of things then. Sorry, all these meetings run together. So,
Dr. Walters, is it possible for you to move closer? We can't hear you.
okay. Hang on, Donna. Donna, can you hear me now?
It still sounds a little faded.
I'm getting as close as I can here. So,
Oh, there I can hear you great.
all
Thank
right,
you.
good.
Yeah, I can hear him.
I'm going to just kind of cover some big highlights from that meeting. There were, sorry, I'm just trying to find all the things. I think some of the big discussions focused around, and I know Dr. O'Brien circulated a memo recently about the AEMT scope of practice and intubation being removed from that level going forward. That is, the decision was to remove that from the current training curriculum and exams coming up as of January 1st. It was also supposed to be removed from the protocols on January 1st. And it's my understanding that the state is in the process of developing a policy statement on that, and that is under review before being circulated. So we're kind of at a in limbo period, and I don't know if either Ed or Don are on the phone and have anything that they'd like to say to as far as an update about that, because I know this is a question that we frequently get asked as medical directors.
Hi, Brian. Sorry, I missed that. Brian?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I missed that question. Henry here.
Oh, Henry, it wasn't for you. It was for Ed Major or Don Trepez if they're on the phone regarding the AEMT changes and intubation and policy statement coming out.
I don't know if that's on, but basically what you said, Doc, is it is in review at the commissioner level, and something should be coming down shortly, is what I'm told, as of yesterday.
All right, so I guess we're still in this kind of limbo period. I know that there are some agencies and medical directors that have said that they're going to take that out away from their AEMTs at this point. There are other agencies that are continuing until something formally comes out from the state, and so I think at this point, Dr. O'Brien, it's really a agency and medical director decision, and any AEMTs should consult with their agency and agency director. There was a discussion also about, I'll bring it up as a point of just information here, a discussion about the weight-based tapes, basically like a Broslow tape, and medication doses specifically related to Versed and seizures, and that some of those commercially available weight-based tapes or wheels have a higher dose than currently what's recommended in our protocols, specifically when it comes to intranasal or IM Versed. It is 0.2 mg per kg, which is double the dose in our protocols of 0.1 mg per kg. So I'm bringing that up as information for your agencies. If you're using any of those devices, you should check those just to see and make sure they're consistent with our current protocols. This also was discussed and is going to be going to the EMSC to review those dosing schemes and whether we should change our protocols in line with those recommendations. We have seen some providers using those that have given double the dose in the protocols. It is still within the accepted, nationally accepted pediatric dosing ranges and what we would consider within, the appropriate standard of care. However, it's different than in our protocols. I think when the protocols were designed, the intent was to make it consistent one dose, IV, IO, IM, IN, just for ease of providers being able to remember those, but it does cause some confusion, so that's going to be reviewed by EMSC and more to come on that. I'm sure there are some things from the Bureau in Training and Ed that somebody else, can bring up if they want to. I don't see anything big here. There was also a lot of discussions on EMS wait times, and also discussions on how we address this from a EMS community, specifically the state, EMS, CMAC and SEMSCO going forward. This is not, a EMS problem. It is an ED problem, a hospital problem, and there was a lot of discussion on that. It's not just the ER who's boarding patients, but it's a whole hospital-wide throughput issue that comes into play. And so there were some good ideas and suggestions of how to involve the larger Department of Health and the Commissioner to try to look at some hospital-wide metrics on a measure of ED health and efficiency, and how we can use those to help improve our EMS system as a whole, understanding that there's a lot of things that play into hospitals' finances, abilities to manage all these patients and all the things that we're seeing in healthcare right now. This is not a state issue, it's not a local issue, this is obviously a national issue which many people are aware of. And I think that those are the big highlights from that meeting, other than some ongoing discussions about I guess, declining numbers of providers in New York State and how we address these recruitment, retention, and larger workforce issues going forward. But I don't think there's anything else that we need to discuss here, per se. And if I missed anything, anyone else can feel free to speak up.
Okay, thank you. That'll bring us to the chairman report. I have so first of all, I just want to extend the thanks from the WREMAC and me personally to everybody who worked through the blizzard of 2022, or coordinated from home, or was trapped at work, or was trapped in their car. But all of the agencies and physicians and APPs and nurses and techs and environmental services people that through the worst of it, kept working to take care of everybody. That was really phenomenal in an unprecedented storm, so thank you very much. On December 27th, I issued a temporary approval to the City of Lockport in support of their ambulance MuniCon application and their CS license, because they are about to resume ambulance transport. Chief Quagliano is here today to discuss that under new business, but the prelim approval was issued at the end of December, and we'll talk about it today and vote on it as needed. We'll get back to bylaws. That's in old business, but the bylaws review is largely done. Though we'll talk about it a little bit today, and then they'll be sent out to the membership to discuss and then vote and hopefully accept at the March meeting. And then lastly for me, just a reminder on destinations for pediatric psychiatric patients, as in patients under the age of 18 that are currently being mandated for transport to a 939 hospital, so Niagara Falls or ECMC, either on 941 status or 945 or what have you. If there's no acute medical concern, i.e. overdose or some kind of injury, they can be transported directly to the receiving facility. Okay, ECMC and Niagara Falls can certainly handle an uncomplicated med clear. If there's concern about, for example, a significant overdose, whether it's acetaminophen or a tricyclic antidepressant or digoxin or something else, if there's any concern about that, and whether or not they should be seen because they may require admission at Children's, just call Med Direction at either facility. We can help you figure that out. Okay, but anybody that doesn't have, I think they need labs and I think they might need to be admitted medically, they can go directly to the receiving facility. If you get any issues with that, let us know. I will clarify that with the facilities I work at to make sure that you're not getting bad advice from us, and hopefully we can smooth that out. That's all I have for the chairman's report, so that would bring us to Trauma Advisory Committee, and I believe Beth is on the phone.
Yes, I really don't have anything to report except that our next meeting will be on March 22nd, and the invitations or the notifications should have gone out at this point. And if anybody is in need of an ATLS course, I know a lot of the extensions are expiring this year. A full-blown course will be held at the end of March and a recert at the end of April.
All right, thank you. Program agency reports, STEMS.
Just a few things. We have our regional paramedic program is starting up next Monday. We were able to add Belmont as a site, so we will be having 3 sites, Jamestown, Olean, and Belmont. We have 34 students enrolled, so we're looking forward to that. We also are doing EMS Leadership Live, which is being presented virtually. It starts on January 31st. I still have a few spaces available if anyone from our region is interested in taking that. And then in February, we'll be doing a carbon monoxide poisoning CME at the hypothermic chamber here in Olean. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. UBMD.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So our report was attached. Not much to add to that. I do want to welcome Mike Shaw, who we hired as the Associate EMS Director at UV. He's going to be kind of managing the Big Lakes region for us. The other thing is we've been working with the developer to get the portal all established for the Big Lakes region. I think hopefully we're just around the corner. Our goal is to have them up and running this credentialing period. So more to come on that. And lastly, as I do apologize to Karen, I did have a PAD application request from Sanborn Fire Department. If we could add that to the approvals, please. I do have the paperwork and they're all set. So, other than that, unless anyone has any questions, that's all we have.
Nope. All right. So subcommittee reports. Anything other than AEMT stuff? Dr. Walters, anything from the collaboratives?
No.
All right. QI, I know Dr. Borton's on the phone. I heard from Dr. Tanaka that she has nothing to discuss. Dr. Borton, anything with QI today?
No.
Very good. So bylaws, I'm going to lump into old business. We'll move to old business. The bylaws review is done, and thus we will dissolve the ad hoc committee for bylaws review. The only major changes were as discussed at previous meetings in terms of modifying who is a voting member of the REMAC. Hospitals, so the idea is hospitals will still appoint a representative, one each in the region. No longer will there be an alternate. And then any agency medical director is a voting member if they wish to participate. So 1 vote per agency, per medical director. If you're a medical director of 5 agencies, you still get 1 vote on the REMAC. And then the only other change was just to bring the bylaw wording into alignment with our current understanding of state law in terms of certification of providers. So the current bylaws read that the REMAC can limit or revoke the ability to practice within the region. It is our new understanding that it's not even that new, but we haven't revised these in a while. It is the current interpretation by the state that we do not have the authority to do that at the regional level. That is only something reserved for the Bureau of EMS, the Department of Health, and an individual service medical director can limit care. So we will modify that to say something along the lines of we can recommend review or whatever by the agency medical director, but the REMAC does not have authority to stop you from working. So those will be circulated next month for voting and acceptance to be done with this at the March meeting. That brings us to new business. So there's really only a couple items. We'll do our mass approvals at the end, but before that, the City of Lockport Fire Department is here to ask for a letter of support from the REMAC for their ambulance MuniCon application, as well as the controlled substance support. Is Chief Quagliano here?
Yeah.
All right, would you like to come up? Welcome, thanks for coming.
Thank you, much appreciated.
I just want to get you up near the phone so the people on the phone can hear you.
Is this close enough or?
I think so. Can people on the phone hear the chief? Yeah, maybe just come around. This is part of it, or just this? All right. Yeah, maybe just right here. Thank you, sir.
No, thank you. My appreciation for allowing me to come on such short notice. The long and short of it is we are an ALSFR agency that's going to move towards a transport MuniCon. The state has requested that, along with the letter of support I already have from REMAC, that we do a specific one to allow us to share our controlled substance license between the ALSFR and the transport con. So they want that letter to accompany the application. So that's what I'm here today to petition you for.
Okay.
That's the long and short of it.
Does anybody have any questions for Chief Quagliano? All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
All
Appreciate
right.
the time. Thank you.
Appreciate your time. If there's no further questions or discussion on the matter, then I'd entertain a motion to direct the chair to issue a letter of support for both their ambulance transport, but also specifically to share the CS license between their current ALSFR service and the ambulance MuniCon.
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Lynch. Second?
Josette, second.
Dr. Teuscher. Any opposition? Any abstentions?
Dr. Brian, Dr. Seth is going to abstain.
Thank you. One abstention. All right, with the exception of the one abstention, then this will pass by unanimous consent, and I will issue the letter today or tomorrow. Thank you very much. All right, so our current approvals and notifications of intent. Medical director changes from to Dr. Ryder for Andover, West Seneca 1, moving from Dr. Billatier to Dr. Mangione. Level of care change, critical care to paramedic for Crandall, Hook, and Ladder. Let's see, Candle from ambulance transport to BLSFR. Epi syringe notification for Pembroke Fire, CPAP approval for Marilla Fire, and then the pad notification, was it Sanborn? Mm-hmm. Okay, pad notification for Sanborn that was submitted to Rob. I would entertain a motion to approve those en masse.
Motion.
Dr.
Second.
Walters, Dr. Lynch. Any opposition? Any abstentions? All right, the motions pass. All of those are thus approved. I will issue the letter as requested. Is there any other new business before the REMAC?
Dr. O'Brien?
Yes, sir.
Karen, can you pass me the microphone here? I want to bring up a question that came up down in the southern tier. This is specifically related to a hospital down there wanting to become a base station and provide medical control, and that currently does not provide medical control. And as they're going through the process of looking at some of the, there's not much in the actual regulations, but I guess in the policy statements, it does say that it's a Bureau Policy 1105 says that the online medical control provider, whether that's physician or non-physician, which we can talk about, must successfully complete a REMAC-approved online medical control program blah, 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 and that the REMAC is responsible for conducting quality assurance of this. So they were asking, a lot of their, this is Westfield Hospital, a lot of their physicians work in Pennsylvania, have Pennsylvania medical control certificates. Their question is, what we as a REMAC allow or say meets this base station requirement essentially, which we've always kind of talked about, and about having a way to I guess, have that be completed electronically or online or something like that. But the question is, what actually needs to be done, who needs to complete it, and what do we accept? And I'm going to throw out just a couple of ideas. One, if you have, I would argue that if you have a Pennsylvania state medical control certificate, which they require in Pennsylvania, we would probably give reciprocity and accept that, right? And I guess where I'm going is we don't really have a REMAC policy on this, and I feel like, you know, this kind of refers to a REMAC policy in the state policy, and so maybe we need to develop one, and I'm happy to work on that, Dr. O'Brien, but I guess I want some input on what we feel it should say. So then the question becomes, in this day and age, if you are a board certified ER or EMS physician, right, you would have done a base station course at some point during your residency. Do we require those board certified in emergency medicine to also complete this requirement? That would be a question. The other question is, what about ER doctors working presently who are credentialed by their hospital but are not ER board certified? How do we feel about those? And the last is, there are a few places, I think, in the region still where we have APPs, right, PAs and NPs who are giving medical control at certain hours of the day, and what do we require for them? Do we require everyone to take a base station course? Do we only require it for one of those three groups? And then, of course, the last is, how do we police and enforce this, which is probably the bigger question. And so, I have my own thoughts, but I guess I will open it up for discussion to you or the group.
I mean, I think anybody that wants to participate in the discussion should jump in. You know, I think at the very least, if you're not board certified or board eligible, like residency trained in emergency medicine, then I think you need to take a course if you're answering that phone. You know, the REMAC doesn't have a lot of teeth with this per se in terms of enforceability, but one of the things that it does specifically have in the bylaws is the ability to remove a facility's ability to give medical direction, right? So we'll tell agencies to stop calling you and to disregard your orders, and that's not a position I think we've been in the past, and I don't think it's a position anybody wants us to be in the future. So I would argue, I would ask that as we develop this policy, that all of our partner hospitals, you know, on sort of a good faith basis, right? Like this is to drive our care in a better direction, right? This is to make sure that the direction we're giving out of our emergency departments is reasonable and is somewhat predictable, right? Based on the collaboratives and kind of general good practice. That hasn't always been the case in the past, and we've had to have some QI meetings and come to better understandings between agencies and facilities in the region. But never have we been in a position where we were talking about, you know, removing a facility's ability to provide direction. So I think, you know, as a hospital that receives patients from our region, I think, you know, Westfield is very, very well reasoned in wanting to be a part of the regional medical control system. You know, we have historically accepted, for reciprocity, Pennsylvania and other adjacent states, you know, sort of base station equivalent, but that's always been case by case. Not for any good reason, other than probably because we didn't have a policy just blanket saying that we can do that. So I'd be open to everybody's thoughts on the matter. I think it's a great idea, and I think Dr. Walters just nominated himself to run the ad hoc subcommittee. But does anybody else have any thoughts or feelings?
I think the only thing would be...
Mr. Chairman, Scott.
Hey, Scott.
I just want to definitely thank Dr. Walters for bringing this up and to attention. It's been a conversation in the Southern Tier for a little bit of time, but I would just ask that when we look to revamp this policy, that maybe we follow some of the provider privilege application requirements, and that these facilities have to report to the program agency who the providers are, and that they have actually completed the required course. Because I think we lose touch very quickly as providers change at facilities. And then we're getting poor medical command or no medical command out of some of these smaller facilities.
That's a fair point.
So, Scott, I don't disagree with that. I think the question, though, becomes, and this is where I think Dr. O'Brien, part of your thoughts were is, as a REMAC, we don't really have authority over hospitals and or ERs, right? Although it's weird because there's a policy statement from the Bureau that says that we can develop approving these online medical control personnel. But yet, I don't think we have any actual statutory authority to do anything about it if they don't comply. And so I think that, I understand. I think what we want to do is try to give some guidance and framework, but at the end of the day, I don't know what teeth we can have or how we would enforce this other than perhaps reporting it to, I don't know, some other part of the Department of Health or something to look into, but
Right.
I think that can be a little bit difficult. I think that my hope would be if we provide some standardization and some best practice guidelines that most people would fall in line and comply, especially if we reach out to those ED directors and things like that.
Yeah, I think that, and the more I chew this over in my head in terms of enforcement, is again, the only tooth we have is to take your phone away, which, is extreme, particularly in the case of like this one provider at your hospital just won't take the course but keeps answering the phone. I don't know why we should punish everybody there or all the services that drive there. So, in that this authority really comes from that policy statement saying that, the REMAC credentials and monitors medical direction given within the region. I think if we really find ourselves having a problem that a couple friendly emails or phone calls can't resolve, then we would probably reach out to our friends in the Bureau and ask, hey, you're the ones that say we get to do this, how do you propose we help? So I think we could engage them both in the drafting of the policy and also probably going forward.
Hi, Dr. Lamont here. I think the idea of enforcing is based on the word mandated. I don't think the committee would mandate such a thing, and I agree with Brian that such recommendation and best practice is probably the only avenue that makes sense. It sounds like there's you've got a baton, and I don't think that using it realistically to remove an entire facility from access to the care that's being provided makes any sense. I think if they've done, and they're board certified, have done the course, or are not board certified, recommended to do the course as opposed to required to do the course, it's probably the language that we use in any statement of position that this committee would have.
Agreed. I think that tooth is really for some unforeseen, unimaginably bad scenario with a hospital. So I can't see us going down that pathway. Certainly not lightly, but maybe not at all. I think I agree. I think this needs to come from a place of we're just trying to make the system better and include more people in it. Yeah, would you mind taking a stab at a draft? And
so what I'll do is I'll try to draft something, and Dr. Lamoth, I appreciate your comments, and I think we're all on the same page about how we word the policy in that, and so we'll be careful about that. I guess what I'm asking, or what I want a little guidance on is, I think if we say, if somebody has a base station course from a neighboring state, right, we're okay giving reciprocity for that? Does that sound fair?
I think I would just make a comment or
Dr.
recommend
Walter, this
them
is
review
Donna.
the protocol.
After you had talked to me about it,
great.
did find Susquehanna had a nice policy, I'm gonna forward that to you.
Alicia already did, Donna, thank you then.
I was just going to say that
Okay.
what would be good is if we're recognizing reciprocity on the base station course, at least making a recommendation that the provider reviews the New York State protocols and the collaborative protocols in the region, because there is some differences between that and the PA state protocols. And I think that's more important, than the base station course, because there may be different practice variations there that I don't know that somebody who's only practiced in PA is going to know.
Yeah, I will say, so your point's right, and I think that as time goes on, the scope of practice has gotten pretty much the same and much closer. There are certain things that are on standing order or are not, or medications that are approved in their formularies that are a little different. But I think for the most part, if you know the protocols and you actually understand what you're supposed to be doing, you probably can give appropriate medical control within the scope of practice for those providers. But I think that that's a good point to bring in there, which I'll put in. What about, so I guess the question then is, how do we feel about physicians who are board certified or board eligible? They should be taking a base station course in their residency program at this point. So is there any need for them, or do we automatically grant them, say you've met the requirements? Which would be my personal thought, but.
I would say let them
Okay.
meet the requirements. They met the requirements.
All right, and what about then, so I guess the discussion is, from what I'm hearing from Dr. Lynch, is that if you're board certified or board eligible, we feel that you've met the requirements as part of your residency training at this point, correct? I'm just repeating for the people on the phone. How about those that are credentialed working in an ER but are not board certified in emergency medicine? What is the, all right, the hospital says, they give the hospital, go ahead, Josette.
Just a little aside, I mean, we have some things that might be sort of unique to our area, that it might not be a bad idea that at least we have a sign off or something that they're aware of and have seen this, just so that's available. I mean, there's the courses that you generally take in residency, you know, are sort of general, but in case we have any sort of policies that are region specific, that might be something that needs to come up, because sometimes that becomes an issue in giving that control.
So you're saying something about, a review of specific
You know, maybe
regional
something
policies?
that's policy, yeah. That at least that they can say, they sign off that they looked at the policy.
So maybe like a list of what we think might be unique regional variations or something in the protocol that we want to put in there? All right.
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah, I think that might not be a bad idea.
So what do we do with these doctors who are not board certified but are working in a hospital in the area that right now are probably answering the med control phone, who maybe haven't taken a base station course? When the patient gets to the hospital, they give medication, they order the medications. How do we feel? What do we do with this group?
So let me ask you then, if we don't make them take it, then who's the course for? Right? Because like if you're residency trained, you don't need it. If you already have one from another state, you don't need it. And if we're just gonna let you because you're working in an ER, then I guess I don't know who the course is for. So I'd be in favor of if you're not board eligible or board certified in emergency medicine, that you take the course.
And then I think then the same logic, then APPs would benefit and should be required to take
Yes.
a base station course. I think we agree on. Okay. So then, if there's any other thoughts, I'm willing to hear them. Otherwise, I will try to put something together and circulate it before the next meeting for review, and then we can discuss and go from there.
That'd be great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks everybody for the discussion. I saw somebody on the left side of the room raise their hand for other new business. Yes, sir.
I just had a clarification, if there was like a stance, going back to like the 941, 945
Yes.
for pediatric patients, is there a preference on the hospital in which they're gonna call, like either the county or Niagara Falls Memorial? For some of those like gray cases like that, they might be hemodynamically stable, but like, so say if you were to call Children's, and they would say, all right, you know, superficial injuries from like suicidal ideation, you know, they can go to say ECMC, but then ECMC sees the patient and then it's like, well, they have injuries, they have to be shipped back. So is there a preference to call the adult facility first that you intend to go to, or is it just up in the air for either facility?
I don't know that that's really up to me to answer. I think, you know, maybe it's time to give more guidance on that. You know, we historically have kind of let agencies call who they want, whether it's the point of destination or since it's a pediatric patient, call OSHI as kind of the, you know, sort of the resource, you know, phone a friend hospital, if you will. You know, I don't know that I'd be interested in everybody's thoughts, but I don't know that there's an answer that will prevent sort of the, you know, we went to hospital A and they ended up needing to be transferred to hospital B with a lot of reliability. What do you guys think? Kenyon was on the phone. Dr. Kenyon, you're still on the phone?
I am.
Do you have any thoughts on, you know, patients, you know, pediatric patients on 941, 945, whatever, that may have either a reported ingestion or perhaps, you know, superficial seeming lacerations or some other self-inflicted injury, and, you know, the crew wants to see if they should be brought to OSHI for a formal clearance or maybe an admission before going to Niagara Falls or ECMC for their CPEP evaluation. Do you have thoughts or recommendations on whether, you feel like they should call Children's for that consultation or call the facility they're going to and let them determine it over the phone? That was the question.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could go either way. We're always happy to take the call and, triage it and see if it needs to come to us or not. Worst case scenario, they get admitted overnight, but I mean, it's really case by case. We're always happy to take a call and provide guidance, as I'm sure the other hospitals are too.
Okay, it sounds to me like it might not be an unreasonable thing if the providers aren't sure whether they need to be seen at Children's first. Why not call Children's and let them make that decision with you?
I would agree.
They're the pediatric experts. Certainly, if they hear something, in the history or in the meds that that patient had access to or whatnot, or what the injury is, that may influence them to say, bring them by here. Let's look at them. We can always transfer them later. Does that sound reasonable, Dr. Kenyon?
Yeah, I feel like we've seen at least a handful of times where the psych facilities kind of push them our way, even though they didn't need to come, maybe because they're overcrowded too. And so I think that maybe we're the better triage people to assess if they need a pediatric facility or pediatric medical care. And if there isn't anything that we need to address, then we'll tell them to go to the psych facilities.
That seems reasonable to me. I think, the worry I have, and this has happened, I think, just a handful of times, is, we call hospital A, they say, go to hospital B, and then you call hospital B to say, we're coming to you, and they're like, you don't need to come to us, go to hospital A. And I think this can try to help maybe nip that in the bud a little bit. And again, if there's no medical concern or no trauma concern, just go to the receiving facility. I will relay that to my colleagues at the adult facilities that get these patients, that when there's not a concern, that you should expect that they're just going to come to us.
And I don't think every case they need to call Children's, like you said. If there's
Certainly.
absolutely no, if it's just suicidal ideation, you don't need to call us. You can just go to the psych facility.
Yeah, and I'd leave this up to the provider judgment. I completely agree with you. I mean, if somebody says, I'm 15 and I took 2 Motrin because I was sad, we can clear that at ECMC without much worry. But if somebody says, this bottle of Tylenol was full when I left and now it's empty and the kid's looking sad or guilty or mad or whatever, sure, maybe call and get some advice on where to go for the medical evaluation. All right, any other new business?
Mr. Chairman, Todd Reisner.
Todd, good to hear from you.
Hello, sir. I'm sorry this didn't make the agenda under new business, but we did have some discussion at our last REMSCO meeting from a member who inquired about an updated interfacility protocol. I explained to that member that the WREMAC was trying to form a committee to address that issue. Can we get a committee going to update those interfacilities?
So, Todd, I'll tell you, we've formed that committee, I think, 1.5 times. And the second time, most recent time was last year, and I was told then that the CMAC SEMSCO level was going to be looking at something like that, and we actually had talks about Dr. Lynch and Dr. Tanaka, being involved in that or resources for that. I haven't, and so the thought was maybe not duplicate the efforts at the regional level until we see what the state does. I'm not aware of the state doing anything in that regard actively. So I think it's reasonable at this point probably to put something together and see what we'd like to do. And if the state...
I'm sorry, doctor, I can't hear you. Can others on the phone please mute? I can't hear Dr. O'Brien.
Okay. So we've tried making this committee before, and the state was the word from the state was we're going to be having a working group for this. I don't believe that materialized in a way that we would continue waiting. So I think it is reasonable to start a subcommittee, an ad hoc subcommittee for interfacility review again, but with the full intention that this will come up with what we'd like to do regionally, and if the state happens to come up with guidance in the meantime, we can reconcile any differences that there are at that time. So I'm fine with that. I think we can start we'll replace. We'll replace the bylaws ad hoc committee with an interfacility transport guidelines committee. Todd, I presume you would not mind serving on that committee?
I certainly will. I'd
Great.
be honored to.
Great, I appreciate that. If anybody's interested, if anybody else is interested in being a part of that, whether a voting member or not, anybody can contribute their ideas. Please reach out to Todd or to me, and I'll put you in touch with Todd, and we'll get something going. Hopefully, we can have some preliminary discussions, maybe by the March meeting.
Okay, sounds great.
All right, thanks, Todd. I appreciate that. Any other new business before the REMAC other than muting bidder? Okay. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Teuscher, Dr. Lynch. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. We will see you at our next meeting in March. Thank you, everybody who called in.